Okay, today we'll talk about today is the 17th of June 2022, and we'll talk about three architects. We'll begin with the North American Charles Eames, and let's read a little bit about him. Charles Ormond Eames Jr. was born on June 17th in 1907, was an American designer, architect, and filmmaker. This is interesting, and filmmaker in creative partnership with his spouse, Ray Kaiser Eames. He was responsible for groundbreaking contributions in the field of architecture, furniture design, industrial design, manufacturing, and the photographic arts. So quite a versatile architect and artist. Maybe you remember when I presented Saul Steinberg that actually Charles Eames asked him to Saul Steinberg to design, yes, a diploma for him because he needed one to apply for a teaching job in a university. And Saul Steinberg produced his, so-called signature fake diploma, which is sarcastic, was sarcastic and is sarcastic towards the bureaucratic needs that sometimes are not at all, legitimate. Because Charles Eames was a force in architecture and design. He didn't need that, so-called proof to prove himself. Okay, so education. Charles studied architecture at Washington University in St. Louis on an architecture scholarship. After 2 years of study, he left the university. I wonder why. Many very important architects did the same thing, Frank Lloyd Wright included. Frank Lloyd Wright only studied actually some kind of a technical post-high school kind of a, engineering drafting, and then he left and he became Frank Lloyd Wright. Many sources claim that he was dismissed for his advocacy of Frank Lloyd Wright, by the way of Frank Lloyd Wright, and his interest in modern architects. You see again and again, a genuine, dedicated architect and artist who was a rebel. And most good, dedicated artists and architects are just that, rebels. They rebel because they rebel in the name of truth. He loved Frank Lloyd Wright, and justifiably so, because Frank Lloyd Wright was indeed a very important architect. And he loved modern architecture. And St. Louis University at that time, was not so advanced in its vision as Charles Eames was. So apparently he was dismissed because he advocated Frank Lloyd Wright and modern architecture. I don't know. The university reportedly dropped him because of his too modern views. It seems there is nothing new in the world. They dropped almost a genius. I mean, I don't know, but Charles Eames was and is a very important, creator in the field of architecture and design and so on. And the school dropped him, because he was too modern. In other words, he was too creative. Other sources, less frequently cited, note that while a student, Charles Eames was also employed as an architect at the firm of Trueblood and Graff. The demands on his time from this employment and his classes led to sleep deprivation and diminished performance at the university. Well, we know about these kind of situations, of course. So there is nothing new under the sky or under the sun or in the world. The same old story, But forget this. We talk about Charles Eames today because he deserves it and because he earned this, honor, so to speak. I am joking, but it is an honor for us to talk about him. Here he is the man. Here is the man who didn't finish his school for whatever the reason. He was dismissed because he loved modern architecture. He was rebellious. He was, sleep deprived. We don't know. But he was genuine. He was true. and we are going to see some of his buildings, because he did build. And he is also very famous for his furniture designs. And here he is with his second wife, Ray, who was, I think, a great partner. And together they produced, very innovative and forward-looking works. Charles Eames, with a beautiful diploma designed for him by Saul Steinberg, born in Râmnicul Sărat. Look at them here, isn't it beautiful? The artists as kids, they are grown-up people, but they are like children, enjoying themselves, being creative and playful. This is the spirit. This is the spirit we should all have if we want to be creative, to be playful and to be childlike or children-like. I love this picture of Charles Eames and Ray together. And here they are. I'm sure there was a beautiful love story between them. They met as students, and they, truly represented a forward-looking, spirited, fresh, attitude vis-a-vis art, vis-a-vis drawing, not vis-a-vis architecture, vis-a-vis design. But as you see, when he began, he drew, he made drawings, kind of conventionally, as many students do. This is a sketch of some furniture that he did. Another historicist sketch. He drew well, of course. Projects for chairs. They designed a lot of chairs. I don't know what this is, but I like this sketch. This is a letter. I forgot who it was addressed to whom. I guess to his daughter. Look at it. Again, playfulness. It's very, very important to be playful. Because without playfulness, you cannot truly create. Now, we begin with early works by him, which are not well known, because this man, before he met Ray, he actually built two churches in 1934 in Arkansas, and the other one also in Arkansas around the same time. And you wouldn't really expect from the high modernist that Charles Eames was to design two rather kind of traditional or traditionalist, almost Gothicist churches. Look at this. But I actually like this work because it's and it's rather unusual, I would say, for the the United States to have this kind of there is an expressionism here, which is not very common in the United States. So I guess even as a young man, he had something to say in the field of architecture. Even the interior, okay, the space is not, extremely, innovative, but the ceiling, the roofing, I think it's well done. And with a touch of modernism about it. Although 1934, this was not a building to assert modernity, yet I think he designed very well the roof and implicitly the ceiling. Otherwise, the building is not very unconventional, far from it. But it's still an interesting building, I would say, by Charles Eames. He designed another church, is this one year later, also from Arkansas, St. Mary's Catholic Church. And this one, again, towards the outside is not in any way, outrageous or alarmingly innovative. The interior also is not announcing his revolutionary work later. But again, there are qualities, I think, in the structure of the roof and the way he displayed honestly the structural forces of the upper part of the building. Charles Eames, happy birthday to him today. Okay, we move rather quickly because we have two more presentations besides the one on Charles Eames. Now the Meyer house, 1936, 1938 in Missouri, quite a large house. And again, not truly announcing what was to follow, but there is some good brickwork here and a certain, certain touches of modernity, like this window in the corner, which turns around the corner. You could say that, here was an admirer of Frank Lloyd Wright. I like this fact that, some bricks have on them inscribed some musical notes. And I'm sure he did this intentionally. What an interesting idea, to incorporate in the masonry wall some bricks which have inscribed on them some musical notes. Maybe in reference to Eupalinos, the character of Paul Valéry's writing, Eupalinos ou l'architecte, Eupalinos or the architect. And in that little book, Paul Valéry says that there are three builders, one who places a stone above another stone. This is a builder. Then the second one who places a stone above another stone or a brick above another brick and makes them talk. He is the master builder. And the third one who places a brick above another brick or a stone above another stone and makes them sing. And his name is Eupalinos, or the architect. So here, I don't know if Charles Eames knew about this writing by Paul Valéry, but, spirits, there are, elective affinities, spirits meet sometimes, and in his own way, he wanted this world to sing. Even if the building maybe is not singing so much as we would have liked, but it's okay. I think it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea, and even this, little bas relief on the brick as well. Again, there are many ways in which one can be creative. Another house, 1936. Here is written Charles only because he is usually known for his work together with his wife, Ray. But this was before he met Ray, or anyway, he built them together. I mean, alone. The bridge house, this is interesting because he worked with a great architect, Eero Saarinen, and they designed a house but was not built in 1945, but he collaborated with Saarinen on various projects, houses. And clearly modern design, 1945, the bridge house. You would not have expected this project after seeing the previous house, but there was a clear moving forward from Charles Eames. And look at this. This is a model, I guess, because it was not built. But if it was built like this, it would have been certainly published on Arch Daily and other e-signs and so on. But he did build in this spirit, and we are going to see. I like this project by Charles Eames and Eero Saarinen. Now, memorial competition from 1947. The Jefferson National Expansion. Here, I couldn't quite understand what they did or what he did, but it does seem like a complex project. Now, the Eames house. This is an interesting house, and is probably the best. Is probably the work that he's the best known for. Actually, this house was built as part of a program after the Second World War to create prefabricated houses. This was supposed to be case study house number 8. but it became the Eames house. And we are going to see it later in detail. Now the case study house number 9, the Entenza house. Entenza, I just found out about him 2 or 3 weeks ago, was a very, very interesting man who brought modernism to the West Coast of the United States through the publication of a magazine called Arts and Architecture. John Entenza was a great admirer of Charles Eames and was a great promoter of the newest ideas, the avant-garde ideas in art and architecture. And I think we need the same thing in this country now. We need an avant-garde. We need a fresh spirit. We need young people to push forward the frontiers of architecture and art. But this building, which was the case study number 1, was designed by Charles and Ray Eames, the couple, the family, Charles and Ray Eames, and Eero Saarinen and Associates. And here it is. You have to understand, now such a house would not impress, but this was in 1940, 1950, 72 years ago. And, it was a modernistic house with questioning everything from what is called, tradition or, domesticity even. Look even at the artwork on the wall. It's a modernistic artwork, and the building also, it emanates modernity. Okay, it's mid-century modernity, but still modernity. So again, they built several houses, part of this program. And actually, Entenza was the one who promoted this program to create prefabricated, modern, affordable houses, which were needed after the Second World War. And I would say they will always be needed. These are not, the least expensive houses. But, they promote modernity with an open heart and an open mind. Charles and Ray Eames plus Eero Saarinen and Associates, they worked together to build this house. I'm going to pay homage for John Entenza as well, because he was a remarkable mover, so to speak, in the field of art and architecture. And we need such examples. We need them. Revolutionaries, rebels, those who promote the new, those who, break new ground, those who discover new territories, because that gives hope to the world, as opposed to the misery of the war that Mr. Putin and his associates criminally provoked. I still don't believe it, and not far away from us that war takes place. In Europe, in the 21st century, it is unacceptable, provoking so much suffering. And he claims he's a believer, Herman Miller showroom, 1950 in Los Angeles, California. Look at this facade, 70 years ago, but it's freshly new. It's freshly modern. Unfortunately, now there is a bench in front of it, which is far from being freshly modern, but they didn't design that bench. They designed the facade, the showroom of this building, Herman Miller being an important manufacturer of innovative furniture in the United States. Look at the bench. The bench was obviously not designed by Charles and Ray Eames, but the facade of the building was. That bench has to go. As Oscar Wilde said on his deathbed, he looked at the wall covering on the wall, and he said, either the wall covering goes or I go. And then he died. because the wall covering wouldn't move. The Eames house, this is the chef d'oeuvre, you know. It's a beautiful house. It really is. And they built it with, you know, things they bought from, you know, Home Depot kind of store, you know, prefabricated things, you know, ready-made things. And they brought them, they brought them together and they created, I think, a very fine building. Look at this. Now, it's true, the landscape was magnificent to look at those trees, but look how well this modernistic structure sits in a beautiful natural environment, and so nature and culture complement each other in very, you know, uplifting ways. Here they are. I'm sure they love themselves. They loved each other until the end of their lives. It was just a couple that they worked together well, and there was love, there was inspiration, there was understanding. It was probably a very inspiring couple. And look at this, you know. I mean, there are, you know, like this ladder here, you know. There are things that have to do with being spontaneous. It's not a stiff interior. It's open-minded. It's light-hearted, and you know, it expresses, I think, the spirit of this couple, Charles and Ray Eames. So modernity is not necessarily at all, you know, adverse to nature. You could have, you know, the so-called spontaneous order that nature is known for, also present in the design and the making of the building. Like here we see the architect without the diploma, Charles Eames, playing with cubes, because there was a kid in him, and that kid, you know, created joyously, not just for himself, but also for others. Look at this picture, you know, look at the fresh colors, the primary colors. Look at the steel structure. Look at, they did it almost ad hoc, you know, kind of like an ad hoc building. They didn't build it for themselves. They built it for, you know, was part of that case study, you know, program. But they moved in. This house became theirs, and I think they chose well, because it is a brilliant building where even the flowers, I think the plants, feel quite at home. In a way, Charles and Ray Eames were more revolutionary than Walter Gropius at Dessau in Germany, with new buildings for the Bauhaus. But it's true, this was built, you know, almost 20 years later, after Walter Gropius built the buildings for the Dessau. This chair is also by them, and this one perhaps as well. But there are many things going on here, and I like the fact that the atmosphere is not stiff. It's you could say, in a way, paraphrasing a little bit, or almost repeating what Le Corbusier said about, you know, being, you know, a machine habitée, but it's not really, it's not just a machine, or it's a joyous machine, or you could even say it's a playful, it's a toy. In a way, it is a toy. It is a mechanism. It is a machine, but it's also a toy, kind of, because it is a playful environment. And maybe this is not mentioned enough in the definition, you know, found by Le Corbusier. So it's not a machine habitée, it's a playful machine habitée, or I don't know how else to put it. But you understand. Thus, it is not oppressive. The Eames house, case study house. So actually, there were two houses in close proximity, and yeah, we could say that, you know, the aesthetics are similar in a way to the Stil movement, also to the Bauhaus. There are various, you know, cases in the modern architecture of that time that, well, this happened later because the Stil and Bauhaus happened, you know, 20, 30 years earlier. But in the United States, this kind of modernism at that time was not, you know, was not yet the rule, and maybe it never became the rule, but it became a statement of strong influence, even if it didn't become a rule. But the modernists found a great inspiration in this building by Charles and Ray Eames. To be honest with you, I like it more than Villa Savoye. I do, because it's less, in a way, less dogmatic. It doesn't have just white walls. There are colors, there is playfulness. I like even the way they handle the glass. You know, the glass is, I had visited Villa Savoye. I didn't feel a lot of freedom there. Plus here, you don't see, you know, a great homage to the car, as Villa Savoye actually chanted. Now, this is a building for human beings, and the car is not even seen. Plus, the interior has color, has various materials. It's freer. It is freer and more spontaneous, and I think more enjoyable. Now, furniture designs by Charles Eames. There are famous pieces that he designed, and they sold very well, and they are still produced. He designed together with Ray. I don't know exactly what, you know, each one's contribution was, but they work together beautifully. And as such, even as such, as a couple, they are quite an inspiration. Charles Eames, happy birthday to him today, the 17th of June. Now, this piece is maybe a little bit awkward because of that wooden base, you know, but you have plastic over metal over wood. I don't know. Anyway, they tried many things. And yes, architects do love to design chairs. And indeed, it is a very good exercise to design a chair. And it's, as I said, often it's very therapeutic. You feel good if you design a chair that belongs to you, that you created, and you don't need a lot to design a chair. Just imagination and some time, a pencil and the paper, or you know, an old laptop. It doesn't have to be old, of course, but an old one will do too. Try to design a chair. It's very rewarding. A little low, this chair, but who knows? Maybe. Okay, let's read what he said. The best preparation is a general education. I have never found a good mind that allowed techniques to stand in its way. By education, I do not mean schooling. I mean the development of a sensitivity to the forces that give structure to life. Very nice. Very nice. Indeed, education is not about grades, about points, about you know, diplomas. Education is about learning to know, about knowing, and has nothing to do with you know, the measurements of a schooling system. Now, again, the best preparation is general education, and that's exactly what I try to promote through these presentations. General education, to learn as much as we can from the example of those who matter, the good architects. And also, it's important what he said. I have never found a good mind that allowed techniques to stand in its way. It's true. I read many texts written by many important architects. None mentions technical things, none. Frank Lloyd Wright doesn't do it. Le Corbusier doesn't do it. Louis Kahn doesn't do it. Alvar Aalto doesn't do it. You know, although they built a lot, they knew how to build, but they didn't mention technicalities. They talked about the spirit of architecture. Take your pleasure seriously. I like this saying by Charles Eames. Take your pleasure seriously. Very nice. Indeed, without pleasure, you cannot have creativity. And in order to have pleasure, you need to have playfulness. So he could have said, take your playfulness seriously. Or as Jean Nouvel would have said, you know, in fact, he did say it, that he always created like a child who loses himself into his playing. Yeah, when you play like this with the seriousness of a child who loses himself in his whatever he does, then you arrive at true creativity. So again, from Charles Eames, take your pleasure seriously. Don't give up on that pleasure, because without that pleasure, you will have no joy. And without joy, you cannot create. Okay, and now we go to the second architect we'll talk about today, and that is Adolf Meyer. And Adolf Meyer, who is not so well known because he lived in the shadow of Walter Gropius. Walter Gropius, who couldn't draw, from what I read, so he always had someone near him who did the drawings. But Adolf Meyer was an architect himself. He was not just a hand that drew. So it's his birthday, Adolf Meyer. You see, born the 17th of June in 1881. And unfortunately, he died rather young at, 48. Adolf Meyer was a German architect, a student and employee of Peter Behrens. Meyer became the office boss of the firm of Walter Gropius around 1915 and a full partner afterwards. In 1919, Gropius appointed Meyer as a master at the Bauhaus, where he taught work drawing and construction technique. Meyer is also credited as co-designer of the Gropius entry for the 1922 Chicago Tribune Tower competition. And this year we have the centennial of the Chicago Tribune Tower competition, which something was the most important architectural competition of the 20th century. As you can see, it took place in 1922. From 1926, he practiced as an architect in the New Frankfurt project, but unfortunately he lived for only 3 years more and he died in 1929. He was Walter Gropius' right-hand man, his #1 planner and a close confidant. In 1910, they had already worked together on the Fagus factory, one of the most significant buildings in modernist architecture, and it's true. This was the man, Adolf Meyer, let's read. Between 1895 and 1897, Adolf Meyer completed a 2-year apprenticeship with a cabinet maker in whatever the name of that place in the Eifel region. He also received instruction in drawing. He then worked in furniture workshops in Cologne, Krefeld, and Düsseldorf until 1901. From 1903, he attended the School of Applied Arts in Cologne. From 1904, he studied at another school in Düsseldorf under Peter Behrens and Johann Ludovicus Matthäus Lauverix. In 1907, Behrens hired his former student to work in his studio in Berlin. Between 1909 and 1910, Meyer worked for Bruno Paul. The same year, Walter Gropius hired him as the office manager at his studio. This collaboration, which lasted until 1914, resulted in a number of important 20th century buildings, such as the Fagusberg, Karl Bernscheid in Alfeld under line of 1910. Anyway, a lot of data here, and I don't like data, especially when I don't know that language. And an office building and factory in Deutscher. Anyway, when Gropius' practice closed down, Meyer became office manager for the steel construction company Brest and Company in Berlin. In 1919, Walter Gropius brought Adolf Meyer to the Staatliches Bauhaus Weimar as an assistant for the architecture department. Well, they were the only architects then, actually. The Bauhaus was founded in 1919, and there was no other architect except Walter Gropius, who dropped out of school, and Adolf Meyer with a rather adventurous educational upbringing. Here he directed Gropius' private architecture office and taught technical drawing and construction from 1920 to 1925. Together with Walter Mark, he was the site manager for the Haus am Horn project. In 1924, he was responsible for the compilation and typographic development of the book Prototype House, published by the Bauhaus Weimar as the third volume in the series of Bauhaus books. And here it is. He was a very skillful draftsperson, and I would say a skillful architect. But look at this house that Walter Gropius is considered the author, but he was the author just as Adolf Meyer was. They were together, but you wouldn't expect to see this house from the Bauhaus founder, Walter Gropius. And the Bauhaus was already founded because it was founded in 1919. This house is from 1920, 1922. Look at this. Would anyone say that this is a Bauhaus house? Of course not. But it was built by the founder of the Bauhaus. In fact, 1 year later, after he founded the Bauhaus. And it actually has expressionist and traditionalist elements. So again, you know, the Bauhaus at the beginning had different attributes from what is usually known. And expressionism was an important part. Not so much perhaps towards the outside, but towards the inside. And we are going to see. Again, this is a house which in good measure is, you know, traditionalist, and was built by Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer. But look at the interior. You know, this is not what people know about the Bauhaus. But at the beginning, when Gropius hired Kandinsky, Paul Klee, and especially Johannes Itten, and also Feininger, Lionel Feininger, the school was animated by an almost mystical impetus, or a certain élan vital, which was very concerned about spirit, about spirituality. And actually the last word of the Bauhaus manifesto is faith. Yes, faith. And twice in that short manifesto, Walter Gropius uses the word exalted or exaltation. Look at this door. Look at the ornamentation. Again, someone who is not knowledgeable about the beginnings of the Bauhaus would not believe that this was done by Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, but it was. Anyway, interesting, because this is also full of arts and crafts, isn't it? The beginnings of the Bauhaus are very important, and I think something of the beginnings of the Bauhaus should be remembered. So, Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer. Okay, now the famous Fagus factory, which was an excellent work by both Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, more modernistic and convincingly so. It's indeed an important work of early modernity or modernism. But it is not a strident modernity. It is still a modernity which is sensitively connected in a way to what preceded it. Like, for example, the glass parts are still divided in smaller, parcels, so to speak. So it's not, the typical glass of our time, one large piece. No, it's divided in small pieces, and thus connects in a way from a time with a time when there were no large surfaces of glass. What we see here perhaps is not so relevant. It's a factory, but I actually like it more than the buildings of the Dessau, which were built later. I like very much these windows. It's possible that Adolf Meyer had an important role in making them possible. And it's actually a very good idea, to make this kind of windows. And through the movement, not only that you allow the natural ventilation in the building, but also you create an interesting, movement on the facade because of it. And it's a win-win situation, so to speak. Nice work, Adolf Meyer and Walter Gropius. The Fagus factory. The plan is not perhaps very interesting, but forget the plan. The building stands the test of time quite well. I actually find the early works by Walter Gropius a little bit more interesting than his later works, especially those done in the United States. Look at this door, which might even be a service door. It still has the, the ornamentation of those, left and right, graphisms. Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, the Fagus factory. Now, the Werkbund exhibition in Köln, this was also a very nice building that they built together, Gropius and Meyer, Adolf Meyer. Unfortunately, it only survived for a few months because the First World War started and all the buildings in Köln that were built for the Werkbund exhibition were demolished. What a sad thing. And between them, there were other important buildings like the Glass Pavilion by Bruno Taut or the theater by Henny van der Velde. But this work by Gropius and Adolf Meyer, I like very much, and it doesn't exist any longer. Look at this, it's mysterious almost, it even has some Oriental qualities. It belongs both to the past and the present. Maybe I say something self-evident or even banal, but I am fascinated by this work, and I just don't believe it that it was demolished. But yes, it was demolished in order not to be destroyed by the war, because this is what humans are so good at, to build in order to afterwards destroy through bombings and through all kinds of, criminal foolishness. It is again, I cannot forget that at this moment when we talk about Adolf Meyer in Ukraine, not far away from here, people are killed, children, old people, women, men, young men die for nothing because of a criminal leader who goes through who knows what kind of a crisis. It's just incredible. People die. This is not a joke. Buildings are destroyed. Many people suffer. And what do we do? Nothing new in the world. It's just incredible The Second World War was not enough of a tragedy. We have to repeat it in Iraq, when 1 million people died because, you know, the United States and Great Britain and maybe a few other countries decided that that war is legitimate, and it was not. Almost 1 million people died in Iraq. And now we see a similar tragedy in Ukraine, in Europe, in the 21st century. It's just unbelievable. And these wars are provoked by people who go to church. George Bush was going to the church. He was even, you know, embraced by a certain pope. Putin is good friends with the Patriarch Kirill, who approves of the war. And they claim themselves they are believers. There is a lot of hypocrisy in the world, a lot. And nothing changes, really. We had the Second World War, the Vietnam War. There were, of course, other than Afghanistan, and Iraq, now Ukraine, and so on. It never ends. The Chicago Tribune competition. This is the work that Gropius and Adolf Meyer did. I don't find it remarkable. Yes, it is modernistic, but it leaves me kind of cold. I'm happy he didn't win. But here is Walter Gropius, sharply dressed and romantically looking far away. But I don't think his building is so, you know, stunningly looking forward. Anyway, maybe because we have seen many buildings like this, we are not so moved. But this was projected in 1922, 100 years ago. Anyway, Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, their proposal for the Chicago Tribune, which people think was the most important architecture competition or architectural competition of the 20th century. So this was by Gropius and Adolf Meyer, the one we pay homage to today. I don't know who did this one, but this one was done by Adolf Loos. And this one, maybe Bruno Taut. So this is also a famous proposal by Adolf Loos, the column, where he was, you know, kind of playing on the meaning of a column in a newspaper, because the tower was supposed to be erected for the Chicago Tribune, a newspaper. The project that won the competition was by Raymond Hood, is this one, and this one was built. And then there was also another competition in the 80s, like for the new Chicago Tribune, where postmodern architects sent their proposals. Anyway, you can check on the web. There is a lot of information about the Chicago Tribune competition. Now this Muster House am Horn with George Muche. George Muche was a sculptor who taught at the Bauhaus, and Adolf Meyer helped him build this house. Towards the outside doesn't look very impressive, does it? But let's say it's too much writing here. I don't feel like reading it. So he did it with the George Muche. And he was no, sorry, I was not, I confounded him with Muche. Muche was a painter and teacher at the Bauhaus. Maybe he did some sculpture too, but he was an artist who taught at the Bauhaus. He was not an architect, so he worked with Adolf Meyer because he was, you know, the right man at the right place. So they designed this as a prototype for affordable housing, which could be quickly and inexpensively mass produced. Muche, who was a painter and a teacher at the Bauhaus, had already been in the process of designing a house for himself and his wife when the school announced a competition for a model residence. So his winning entry was bold in its simplicity, a square plan with a ring of rooms surrounding a central living room. Each space was designed with an explicit program in mind and intentionally specialized so that it could not be used for any other purpose. Aside from the living room, the house comprised a room for the man, a room for the lady. This is kind of interesting. A room for children, a guest room, dining room, kitchen, and the work niche. And here is the plan. I mean, and the sections, the drawings for the building. And Adolf Meyer was the architect who made it possible. And some pictures from the building. It still stands. I don't know who designed the furniture. Maybe they designed it together. So it was an experimental house, which was supposed to be, prefabricated and built inexpensively. The cubes, playful cubes of Charles Eames. There was a lot of playfulness actually at the Bauhaus. They played a lot. And that's perhaps why they were so creative. Play and work, they came together at the Bauhaus. And they should, in general, I would say. Even Mozart, from what I remember reading, was composing the most serious and complex and formidable symphonies while playing pool. He had a musical scores, at the edge of the pool table. He would play pool and then he would write a few more notes and so on. But then Mozart was not really of this world. He was an angel that came temporarily to the earth. Anyway, this is the house that he built with George Muche. I'm talking about Adolf Meyer. Interesting though, in a way, the disregard for the elevations of the building. In a way, I like it because it's so, unwilling to seduce aesthetically. It's just to call it, it's almost a pre-architecture. It's not yet architecture, but there are qualities in this, I think. And look at the bathroom, rather innovative with a very impressive radiator. I mean, probably in that bathroom, the bath in cold water because it's probably so hot because of that giant radiator that you can't take also a hot bath. It would be just too much. Okay, the kitchen, the essentials. Nice. And look at the building on the left and look at the building on the right. Now, what is this? Elektrizitätswerk in Frankfurt, some kind of a office building for the electrical company or something like this, having to do with electricity. Nothing impressive seen from today, but when was it built? It doesn't say. Well, he died rather young, 1929, so it was built almost 100 years ago. So yes, in this respect, I would say it was, a little bit innovative. And actually, it doesn't look too bad, even, by the standards of today. I think it's okay, a 100 years old building. Okay, and now we go to the third short presentation today and the last one with a man who was famous rather for, his theatrical staging and his drawings. And that is the Italian Giovanni Paolo Panini. Giovanni Paolo Panini, born in 1691 and died in 1765. Let's read about him. Also born on the 17th of June. Giovanni Paolo Panini was a painter and architect who worked in Rome and is primarily known as one of the Vedutisti, view painters. As a painter, Panini is best known for his vistas of Rome, in which he took a particular interest in the city's antiquities. Among his most famous works are his view of the interior of the Pantheon on behalf of Francesco Algarotti, and his vedute, paintings of picture galleries containing views of Rome. Most of his works, especially those of ruins, have a fanciful and unreal embellishment characteristic of capriccio themes. In this, they resemble the capricci of Marco Ricci. Panini also painted portraits, including one of Pope Benedict XIV. So he died in 1765. At that time, Piranesi, the great Piranesi, who also loved ruins, he was the great master of depicting ruins, was 45 years old, because Piranesi was born in 1720 and he died in 1778. So they were, for a good number of years, contemporaries. But Panini was born 29 years before Piranesi. This was the man with a nice wig. And these are scenes that he depicted, the madness and the madness of art and of collecting art. Look at this. You know, why do human beings need art? Well, because otherwise life would be almost unbearable. You know, we need sculptures, we need paintings, we need art. What can we say? Without art, the air could be quite hard to breathe. But it's true, where you have too much art, the air could be equally hard to breathe. Interior of the Pantheon, Rome, 1734. At that time, Piranesi was 14 years old. Look at it, the Pantheon, you know, the great building where even the Emperor Adrian had apparently something to say as an amateur architect, a great man of culture, as we don't have too many politicians these days, and a great lover of beauty. And the building still stands 2000 years later. And what can you say? It's almost an imago mundi. It's almost a quintessential building for Western culture, for Western architecture. And Raphael himself is buried here in a crypt, in an alcove. St. Paul preaching in Athens from 1734. Like many people at that time, he knew how to draw very well. He was a painter, you know, and capriciousness, the capriciousness of art animated these people, you know. I wish the contemporary architect could manifest his or her capriciousness too sometimes, at least in school. Roman Capriccio, the Pantheon and other monuments. And the Pantheon you recognize immediately. They are majestic, all these temples and monuments, but look at the infrastructure, you know. But at that time, they didn't have buses, they didn't have cars, they didn't even have bicycles. So people just walked on the, you know, on the bare earth, sometimes with bare feet, around these incredible monuments. Here is the statue of the Emperor Mark Aurelius, which was supposed to be in the Campidoglio. And now I see it's a collage of various buildings of Rome that he brought together in this pictorial work. A capriccio of the Roman Forum, Panini. The Forum, that Forum which fascinated Palladio, spent 2 years there studying and measuring and reflecting and so on. The great Andrea Palladio. Ancient Rome, 1757. Where is the ancient Rome? Well, it's on the many pictures on the walls. What can we say? The madness, the beautiful madness of art. That very art which you know, we think that actually art copies life. It's actually the other way around, at least sometimes. Life copies art. Modern art, modern Rome, sorry. 1757. It's the same, no? It's the same or similar. It's similar. It's not the same. It's just similar. Anyway, the lottery at Palazzo Montecitorio. The lottery, you see, even at that time, 300 years ago, people were still fascinating about making a fortune or a quick buck through lotteries. Look at the commotion there, you know. I guess, you know, the fascination with money always existed. St. Peter's Basilica from the entrance. Yeah, that's St. Peter in Rome, again, with the baldachin by Bernini here at the end of the, you know, the nave. This long part of the building was built by Maderno. Michelangelo had a different vision about the building, but Maderno completed the building. Anyway, there was a collective work, a collective effort. Several brilliant architects and artists contributed to this building in various ways. Bramante, Raphael, Michelangelo, Maderno, Bernini, of course, adoration of the shepherds, adoration of the Magi, shown here, the Brooklyn Museum. Sorry about something wrong with the picture, and I knew it from the minute I uploaded it. It's, I don't know, maybe it's covered with glass inside the museum. That's why you can see it very well. View of the Colosseum, 1747, and the Colosseum it is. You know, when was it done? 265 years ago. 265 years ago, this view of Rome was done by Panini. German soldiers in 1944 posing with a Panini picture, because warriors, soldiers, bureaucrats, bankers, presidents, and so on have everything. They have power, but they don't have culture. They don't have art. So then they steal paintings, you know, they steal paintings. Hitler stole paintings. The Russians stole paintings. The Russian museums are filled with artworks of the hated Western world. I couldn't believe what the former president of Russia said about the West, you know, describing them in the most abhorrent terms. But the Russian museums are filled with artworks by Western artists. And look here, these are the German soldiers, you know, holding, I don't know if it was an auction or whatever it was. I pity actually these soldiers, you know. This shows again that actually what human beings search for is ineffable in a way. You know, why did they need art when they had no problem to erase cities and towns and bomb people and so on? Why? Why? It seems that indeed even the beasts need beauty. A concert given by the Duke of Nivernais, whatever this is. I mean, you know, there was a law for Baroque events and ruins. It was the same trouble humanity like we have today as well. Ruins of ancient Rome, ruins, statues, people, you know, beggars, homeless people, you know, poets, dreamers, theologians, all around these buildings, you know, these monuments, you know, all wanting eternity and none achieving it, because we are all ephemeral on this earth. And other works by Panini. Here it is, you know, another, he depicted whatever he saw around himself, monuments, you know, celebrations, all kinds of things that make human life on this earth. Panini. Panini. You know, an architect, even if he doesn't build, he can draw. So nobody can take away the pencil from your hand. You can draw, and then Photoshop, you can do it digitally, you can do it manually. You can express what you want to express. Nobody can stop you if you truly have something to say. This was built by Constantine the Great. And there are so many wonders really still in the world. Really, we should stop these deadly wars. Life can be beautiful on Earth. I don't know why we ruin it. Why? I mean, why does Elon Musk want to go to Mars? Why? He's immensely successful, immensely rich, he's adored. Why does he want to leave Earth? It's beyond me. And not just him, the founder of eBay, the founder of Amazon, they all want to leave Earth, all of them. They all want to go wherever, Mars, Moon, wherever. They want to leave the Earth, which is the place where they achieved everything they aspire towards. It's incomprehensible to me. We destroy the Earth and then we leave it. When we could repair it, now we should take care of it. Panini, painting, leaving behind paintings, you know, celebrations, arrows, statues, fountains, broken columns, ruins, blue sky, you name it. St. Peter. Look how small the human beings are compared to the size of the building. And that's how it is, actually. He didn't lie. And it's quite well drawn. The perspective is beautifully done, and pictorially is very well represented. And then the ruins, yes. Even the pyramids are becoming ruins. Nothing lasts forever. So we need Panini. We need Panini to remind us of many layers of reality and the many layers of meaning in reality. I guess this is Piazza Barberini. No, Navona, Piazza Navona, with statues of Bernini. And here is a church where both Bernini and Borromini contributed. Great works. Rome indeed has so much richness. But you see, at that time it was filled with water. It was like or maybe it was just temporarily for some kind of a festivity. That's possible too. I remember around Christmas some years ago, I filmed some hippies here playing the guitar. It was very nice, actually, and very moving. Unfortunately, I lost that video. Rome again. Panini. Human life and architecture. Columns, monumentality, monuments, and the human drama underneath. The Pantheon. A good number of years ago, I was at midnight on Christmas Eve inside the Pantheon, and I noticed it was night, of course, it was midnight. I noticed some white dots here, you know, moving, and I didn't know what they were, although I should have known. Well, later on, I found out they were actually white pigeons flying, you know, they were seen, they were white, and against the black sky, you know, that's what they were, some white dots moving. I ran away from St. Peter because I went there to make a film about Christmas in Rome, and I was very disappointed about the shallowness of what was happening there. And then I went to the Pantheon, hoping it would be better, and it was a little bit better, but not completely, because on that Christmas Eve, I realized that faith is actually, it has some problems in the present, whatever Gropius hoped for or aspired towards. That's it. So happy birthday to Panini, happy birthday to Adolf Meyer, and happy birthday to Charles Eames.